Hello, I'm Brett Gilliland, host of the Circuit of Success podcast, and here's what's coming up on the show.
I found myself being a part of conversations, on tour. You bring up live, you bring up all these different things. Like, man, I have nothing to do with that, so I'm not really going to mess around with it. And it sort of just found to be more and more applicable. And it just came to, I want to deal with problems that deal with me, and not deal with anything like, outside of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis between my wife, my family and my career, and kind of all those things are intertwined. And that's kind of how it started. And so now I figured out a way to make that applicable to everything.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland, and today, I'm pretty fired up when I'm on these things, but today, as the golfer that I am, I get to interview PGA guy, Scott Stallings. What's up, Scott? How are you?
Good, man. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. It's been a great year for Scott Stallings, hasn't it? It's been a pretty good year.
Yeah, and I would, to your listeners, they need to understand your persistence and patience with my schedule. And I was not trying to be elusive by any means, but my schedule is definitely very unique, and I try to put all these things in one kind of time frame. So I appreciate you bearing with me, and
absolutely.
To anyone that listens, like, he's definitely putting in the effort to try to get people on here. So I can definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I call it pleasantly persistent. I've done that for 21 years, building a business and spending 2 decades of, early on, especially, man, when you're calling people, you got to stay pleasantly persistent in life, don't you? And I think that American flag behind you says effort and attitude. So if you don't have the right attitude, you don't put in the effort, and whether you're on the PGA Tour, you're in wealth management, you're making bourbon, whatever it is, which we'll talk about, you got to put in the effort. So I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you staying with us. But if you could just, for our listeners, give us a little lay of the land, what Scott Stallings is about, what's made you the man you are today.
Well, a lot of things that made me who I am today. Probably my wife, my kids. My wife, Jennifer, we just celebrated our 15th year wedding. Yeah, that's right, 15 anniversary. I have a 6-year-old daughter, Millie, and a 9-year-old son, Finn. So as a husband and a father, it kind of gives perspective on kind of keeping you grounded. And I have one of the best stories I have from, I play on the PGA Tour. I know you just mentioned that, but I just had the best season of my career. And one of my favorite stories of the season is I played at the Tour Championship, and my son came and he decided he was going to watch every day, which is super weird for him. He's like a 9-hole kid, and like, I'm going to go have some snacks, I'm out of here. Like, and so for whatever reason, he watched, and I shot 3 over one day, shot 73, and it was like real sketchy. Like, it could have easily been 80, but it was just kind of everywhere.
One of those days.
And we have one of these pictures. We had a buddy of ours that does some social media and pictures for us, and like, Finn comes and gives me a hug, and it looks like this super, super sweet moment between a father and a son. And he said, "You played so bad today."
That's awesome. You're ready to snap your driver in half, and he's talking about how bad you're playing.
Yeah, nothing like a 9-year-old perspective to keep you grounded and understanding that, while I am playing in one of the hardest tournaments in the world to qualify for, and the fact that, there's only 29 of us, and just kind of how we start. But a nice perspective to kind of understand that, hey, I'm still dad, and, kind of what I do on the grass doesn't necessarily define me as soon as I walk out. But that was definitely one of my favorite stories from the season.
That's great. Can you, I'm going to dive in on some questions, just stuff that, if I ever have an opportunity to talk to somebody like you, I find it what I would call me the pinch me moments, right? That you grow up, you were a Tennessee Tech. We talked about that before we started recording. I played at Eastern, you played at Tennessee Tech, same conference. Obviously your outcome was a little different than mine on the golf. But that's okay. But anyway, we, just those pinch me moments, man, when I get to go play a nice golf course, but you're doing that, every week that you choose to play on tour. My question is that drive down Magnolia Lane, man, for those golfers that know what I'm talking about, that Masters, you make that turn in there. Can you tell me what that's like?
It's definitely very surreal. I had an opportunity to play. I graduated Tech in 2007, and I had an opportunity to go play in 2009, and I turned it down. And everyone's like, you're big time in Augusta. Is like, no, like, I think as a professional golfer, like that's something that's earned
Mm.
and not something that's ever taken for granted. And who knew? I mean, I never knew if I was ever going to have a chance to go, and I ended up having a chance to go to the tournament, not play the course, but just kind of being there and kind of, I remember taking pictures of the golf course and kind of just in my mind, just imagine like watching guys prepare and different things like that. And so 2011, I win my rookie year and I have an opportunity to go. And Tennessee is unique in the fact that like the starter on number one, Toby Wilt, lives in Nashville, and so they do a pretty cool trip for first time Masters participants where they bring you and they give you a chance to like. And I mean, the whole experience. You stay overnight, you do everything, and just sort of get you comfortable with just the everything that is Augusta National. And you earn the opportunity to play and participate in the tournament, but also if you don't go and do all that other stuff, it's hard to do both at the same time. Enjoy the course, enjoy the tournament, but then you're trying to play and prepare too. So it's kind of hard to do both at one time. So they kind of do something to kind of help you get through that, which was amazing. And I remember the first time we got there at night, had dinner, kind of did our thing, and then we were going to play first thing in the morning. And if people want to, you talk about your pinch me moment. One of the hardest prayers I've ever said in my entire life was in the back of the clubhouse the next day, and it was like a 3-hour frost delay. So you're finally getting a chance to play. We're going to be there for 2 days, and I walk out. And I'm like, we're not playing today. I mean, like you could just see the frost like an inch thick and like, man, what's going to happen? So thankfully, the frost burned off. We ended up having a beautiful day. But at the time, they were sending, just because there's so many people, they were sending people off 1 in 10, which is kind of rare there. But I wanted to play from number 1 all the way to 18 and kind of just get it over with. And as far as like my first round, and then I was going to go to work. Lauren Roberts was my playing host, kind of show you around as far as, hey, you need to pay attention to this, which is incredible because I've had the chance to go now a couple times with some different guys on their first time, and more just, man, enjoy the course for the first time. Don't think about playing the tournament. Just think about all you did to kind of get in and the opportunity that what it took for you to get to this moment. And then it's like, all right, then we can kind of go to work and start thinking about all the other stuff that kind of goes into it. But Lauren was with me. We get ready to hit. And then there was this voice that was pretty recognizable that was behind me. So this is December of 2011. And this guy said, son, I hear it's your first time. Let's see what you have. And it was Arnie.
Oh, no way.
And I mean, there was 4 dudes on a tee box, me, Lauren Roberts, Arnie, and this random person who I have no idea who it was because all I saw was him. And like, I always joke that with a lot of guys, especially when they start struggling and stuff, the voices got real loud real quick. And the world started going fast. But I hit a good drive and ended up having an opportunity to spend some time with him that night. He kind of held court and like kind of up above in the top of the clubhouse that night before, had a few drinks with him, got to hear some really, really funny stories. And then sharing around playing April, playing the tournament, I go and Toby, who was the starter, he said, "You more nervous in December or April?" I was like, way more nervous in December. I said, I'm used to this.
Yeah, I guess Arnie's
Yeah. I mean, you're standing 4 feet from Arnie and there's no one else. I mean, like, I'm sure he could hear every thought that was in my head of what I was thinking. So, I mean, the tournament, I mean, there's pressure and everything, but that's a little bit more of what we're used to. Sort of the openness is something that we're not used to. So, but that was a long story for a short question, but definitely something that I don't shy away from. And, any opportunity you get a chance to go to Magnolia Lane is pretty incredible. I had a chance, my partner at Pebble Beach is a member, and another good friend of mine from Memphis is a member, and had a chance to take a couple of my friends, the last, probably 6 weeks or so. I took my caddy and one of my best friends from home, and man, we had probably one of the coolest trips I've ever been on. My caddy's caddied in 6 Masters and he's never played. So,
oh my gosh.
and he played the back tees the first round. I mean, he's a good, probably, 4 or 5 handicapper, doesn't play much.
Yeah.
And we got on some of those back tees and he said, man, I like these holes way better when you're playing. So,
yeah, that's awesome. That is incredible. Yeah, I've got a nice little bet. I won't talk about the dollar amount, but it's a hefty bet with my best friend since third grade, Derek, on who can get on Augusta National first. Whoever does it has to pay the other guy some cash. So that's what we're working for. But and so let's talk more about that. I mean, so do you have those moments, or when you're a competitor, man? This is what you do for a living, right? This is your day job. Do you have that moment when you're walking down the 18th hole and you're like, holy smokes, name the course, right? Augusta National, Pebble, wherever it's at. Like, I'm doing this for a living.
I've had some moments on the good side and the bad side of that. I remember, like, I get my card in 2010 and then turn around and, this is when the season started in January. So basically you get your card in December. I got it at Orange County National, and then turn around and I'm a rookie at Sony. And like, I played the practice round, I started off number 10 and I told my caddy, like, man, number 10 at Sony, like if the wind's down at all, like, I mean, you can drive the green. And I mean, it's honestly not that like tight of an area to hit.
Yeah.
And we get up there and it's like down off the right, like couldn't be any more perfect just to ship a driver up there on the green. And I got over it. I got that driver in my hand. I'm ready to go. And this is the first shot ever on tour. And the starter's like, and now playing his first ever professional event on the PGA Tour, he announces my name. And I'm like, oh no. And as much confidence as I had going into hitting the shot is as little as I had once he said that, because the lights got bright and the voices got loud. I ended up hitting 7-iron off the tee. And I mean, to go from driving the green to 7-iron, I hit 7-iron off the tee. I hit a wedge to like 10 feet and I made birdie. So I made birdie my first ever. But still, like, everyone's like, oh, that's sweet, man. You made birdie your first ever hole tour. It's like, man, I could not have wussed out any more than I already did. So
my arms are like jello standing up there trying to hit.
And I mean, man, I'm like thinking I almost need to hit 3-wood. I'm so amped. Like, I'm about to hit this thing 50 yards over the green. I'm so pumped up. And I ended up hitting a 7-iron, like a chunk pull down the left side of the fairway. And I mean, but that's stuff like that you'll never forget. And I had a really rough start to my rookie year. I missed my first 5 cuts and then almost made the tour championship. I ended up finishing like 40th. So kind of a full range of emotion, but kind of everything that goes into it. There's some really unique, everyone remembers their first time playing with Tiger, the first time, kind of being an event that he was a part of, winning tournaments, different things like that. But having a chance to, this is my 13th season on the PGA Tour, and I've had very, very fortunate to have what I consider the best job in the world. And, I don't necessarily take any day for granted. I had some parts of my life where, definitely it was the waters got pretty muddy and didn't really know what was what. And so I feel very fortunate to have some people come alongside me and, push me in the right direction, kind of help me, kind of understand what a healthy lifestyle looks like and do a little bit better job of taking care of myself and all the different things. So I can, pursue a career for a long time and be the husband and father that my kids deserve and my wife deserves, and to try to be a good steward of an opportunity that the game has given me. And I try to do whatever I possibly can to leave it better than I found it, and to use the opportunities that it provides to, help create different environments and better environments for those kind of around me.
Yeah. So let's spend some more time on that. I mean, you went from a guy, what I had in my notes here from my research, going from 252 pounds down to like what, 190, 195. I mean, what was that knock on the shoulder, if you will, or that, hey man, let's get your attention? Because it's hard to go from where you were to where you're at now, right? They call you one of the best shaped guys on tour. I
was a shape to now sort of in shape. That's what I tell everybody.
I was a shape, not in shape. Yeah.
Man, it was, sort of a combination of just as long as I played good, I could do, excuse me, whatever I wanted. there was not really, and it wasn't like, man, I was like drinking, partying, whatever. It wasn't anything like that. It was just, I was, there was no plan. It was, I kind of ate what I
Traveling or
want.
eating
I, I,
whatever.
I, I traveled like, man, I got a good buddy of mine that has a saying. He's like, man, I rode all the rides. Like, I, if there was a cool place to eat, if there was breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever. I mean, there was no habit in there that gave you any indication that I was a professional athlete. And people kind of attribute that a bunch of different ways, but truly, man, like my diet, my sleep, my training, that was zero. Uh, all those things, were just, I was sort of like a ticking time bomb as far as just a kind of recipe for disaster. And unfortunately, like I was the direct recipient of it. It was no one's fault but my own. So, um, thankfully I had some people come around me. I was about 30 years old and I just was tired of feeling like crap and started asking some questions. And then, everyone always says, man, you remember that anybody that's ever trained, anyone that's ever tried to make that improvement in their life, when they go and it's like, all right, I'm going to do something. I got one of my closest friends. He just got some health insurance redone. He said, man, I saw a number on the scale I hadn't seen. They gave me a few months to kind of get it back together and then I can reapply. And he comes and he's like gung ho, like, man, he's ready to run through a brick wall.
Hmm.
And we give him this 20-minute workout and it literally just put him on the ground. And it was nothing, like nothing to, where's that first moment? Like, you're going to get worse before you get better. I mean, there was getting worse. And then there was what I did, which was literally having the wheels fall off.
Yeah.
And but I needed to have that. I needed to understand that, I was my fault as far as how I got there. And, this is it. Like, I don't know what you guys can see, but this is my body. This is all I get. And I need to be a good steward of that and take care of the things that it provides and, put myself in a little bit better spot where it is at least a conscious effort to try to improve myself mentally, physically, whatever that is, each and every day, to try to be better than I was the day before. And, I didn't do it alone. I had a bunch of incredible people way smarter than me kind of help push me in that right direction, and it kind of helped me to get to where I am today. I never set out to do the fitness thing ever.
Did they come to you and like somebody and trust and respect and say, hey, dude, man, to have a long-term success, you gotta change this direction? Or was it more internally, like you're sitting there and you're like, crap, man, I need to change what I'm doing here, and then you find
a little bit more like that. And I had a really good guy, my trainer PT Adam Curley. We worked together for a while, and he sort of kind of helped put me back together when I was coming back off the road. And kind of had a transition point in his life where he had an opportunity to go and travel with us, on the PGA Tour. And we always joked that when we first started working together, like his goal was to try to get me to go to the gym. Now it's like, do you want to practice today? Like, all right, your workout's 45 minutes, or now it's like the opposite. So he's like tampering. He said, man, I've been on both ends of the spectrum, and now we've kind of found like a good middle ground. So.
Well, that's good. That's good. So talk about that, man. Talk about like, what is that fitness plan for you? Obviously, when you're traveling, I'm assuming when you're on tour in the week, you're still doing some things, but the harder workouts are done at home. So what does that look like for you, including, sleep, recovery? I think you wear a Whoop bracelet. I wear one of those too. Those things are phenomenal information. And so what's that like for you? That accountability, sleep, recovery, all that.
Yeah, I tell people a lot. It's not a matter of if and when; it's a matter of what time of day. That is applicable to everything. And like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And there's like, I got a lot of like these random one-liner zingers that just sort of stick with me. My one for 23 is, I don't want to deal with problems that I inherited. I want to deal with problems that I created. And people can, like, like, all problems aren't bad things. Like I was telling you about my travel earlier, like that travel problem that I have right now is not really a problem. It's a great thing. It's something I work very hard to have the opportunity, but still, like, it's still travel. It's, a long way from home, and, kind of all the other different things that kind of go along with it, but just managing it and kind of understanding, and try to put yourself in situations where you at least have your hand on a little bit of everything, and, you try to do your best to not be blindsided by certain situations that you had nothing to do with. And that's applicable for everything. That's life, family, relationships, business, golf, all sorts of things. And so that was kind of my goal for 23. And if it kind of stays outside that parameter, I really don't want to have much to do with it. And, help me be a little bit more focused on the things that I, you know, with my family, with my life, with my career, and kind of all those different things. So
yeah. So that leads me to Mike Riley, a buddy of mine, Mike Riley. I asked some guys some questions, and he said, well, "How do you set your expectations for the year?" And so let's talk about that. But before we go into that great question, I wrote down, I don't want to deal with problems I inherited. I want to deal with problems I created. That is phenomenal. So how did you come up with that? What's that thinking? And then to Mikey's point is, how do you set those expectations for the year?
Well, that came out of a conversation with one of my really close buddies. And we were talking about, we had a friend of ours get audited. And we somehow just a very long conversation about all the new IRS, and I could care less about talking about all that, but just like, man, like, professional athletes are just, our prime target, especially people that are independent contractors. And, basically our entire life's a write-off in some way, shape, or form. And I was like, man, I am not dealing with an IRS person over something I had nothing to do with. And it just started manifested out of that. And I just didn't ever thought about it again. And the more and more I just found myself started, different things. And, I found myself being a part of conversations, on tour. You bring up live, you bring up all these different things. Like, man, I have nothing to do with that. I have literally nothing to do with that. Sort of my thoughts on it are one thing, but, at the end of the day, that doesn't mean anything. So I'm not really going to mess around with it. And it sort of just found to be more and more applicable. And it just came to, I want to deal with problems that deal with me and not deal with anything like, outside of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis between my life, my family and my career, and kind of all those things are intertwined. And that's kind of how it started. And so now I figured out a way to make that applicable to everything.
Yeah, it's a great quote, man. It really is. And so what's that look like for you? Do you sit down in November, December, maybe now, whatever the time frame is? And I mean, obviously you got a plan for next year. You got to know when you're playing and when the tournaments are and stuff, but do you have, are you a goal setter, a goal planner? And if so, how do you walk through that process?
Yes and no. A little bit more of like a mindset, and that's kind of it. Like or we'll pick a thought or this and that. Like 2022, we called it, the word was variance. And my stats analytics guy, Hunter Stewart, came to me in Napa in September of, that would be 21, kind of transferring, kind of how the fall season goes into the regular season. And he said, you need to create as much variance as you possibly can in your game. He said, you're basically, you're stagnant. And he said, you're a guy that's going to gain 2, 3, 4 shots a week. He said, you're just getting your head beat in. He said, I'd rather you lose 10, gain 15, and net 5 over the course of the week, where you're going to miss a cut by 12 and almost win. He said, that's the guy that's going to make it through a championship. He said, you need to become more like that guy. And so that was kind of the idea. So I was with him last week in Cartersville with my coach, Scott Hamilton, and we were just kind of talking a little bit about it. And before you started recording, have a couple different areas to improve as far as golf wise. But the same thing, like, take a little bit more ownership of some of the areas that need to improve upon. But it's not necessarily like, all right, I want to win, I want to make it to a championship, I want to have an opportunity to make a cup team. Like, if you're on the PGA Tour and those are not your goals, you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that stuff kind of goes without saying. But it's like little intangible stuff. Like, I went the previous year, I would, in the short game area, I was losing strokes, very, very minuscule, but over the amount of time of volume of rounds that we play, I was losing strokes from basically like a quarter of a shot. It ended up being 3/4 of a shot a tournament from inside 30 yards. And transfer a year past, by just changing a little bit of game planning, a little bit of strategy, and a little bit of practice, I ended up gaining 2 1/4. So that's a 3-shot improvement. And all I did was work on one area. So 3 shots over the course of 31 events is a lot.
Well, and you look at even the money, right? I mean, from the number 1 player in the world to the number 100 player in the world, you're talking, a stroke or two, right? I mean, that's there's not much difference, and that's what people don't think about, is the difference in those golfers and what it means to your family, financially. So it's a big deal. And before we started recording, you showed me your TrackMan and all that stuff, and and you were getting your variances, I assuming, dialed in to where you would talk about, this sand wedge game. So walk our listeners through that. What does that look like for you? How are you dialing in these wedges, and what are you working on there?
A little bit of it's sort of like a practice goal of, you know, like this. I don't know if this is technically a golf podcast or whatever, but if you have some golfers on there, I've got a very unique delivery in the fact that I don't have a very big backswing, but I can hit the ball pretty far, a little bit in the sense of like, I have really long arms and sort of a relatively, shorter frame, relative to the length of my arms. So it looks like I don't take the club back very far. But when you deal with off-speed shots and sort of like not full, it's a very, very small window in regards to like what's full and what's like half. Because my backswing is basically almost half as it is. So trying to develop a little bit better plan for like off-speed shots like Pebble Beach, not a lot of spin, kind of getting ready, a lot of wind at Kapalua, and kind of just developing like a little bit more of a game plan and a template as far as, how far certain clubs can go based off of, sort of swing speed, and a little bit of just, it's not necessarily like I think on the course, like, all right, I'm gonna swing at 80 miles an hour, but the more repetition and everything you go, it's like, all right, I know what that feels like. And I know how to fit these shots into these certain windows as I have, kind of based off of there. It's kind of a different way to practice because I don't really have enough of a backswing in my full swing to sort of create what they call like a clock method. Because basically my backswing stops at about 9 o'clock as it is on a full one. So just different things like that. And, kind of figuring out ways to practice where, be a little bit more creative. And I'm not a range guy. I don't like hitting balls, but I can sit there and kind of mess around on a track, man, and, kind of find little nuanced things here and there as far as, maybe kind of pick up, a little bit of more consistency in certain areas and, kind of work around from there.
So what advice, if any, maybe because you're so darn good at golf, you probably don't understand what the average Joes like myself and even higher handicappers, what we deal with. But what's one thing you would tell us that we need to probably work on most, knowing we don't have a lot of time to practice and all that stuff?
Work on your chipping setup, because most people, they get the face right and the feet left to try to get the loft going there. But really, if you look at the best players in the world, we play most of the best players in the world, when they come to chipping and pitching the ball, they go square to shut, which means at least, so imagine like if you have your feet and your club face, like at some point they're going away from each other. You're trying to make the ball go straight. So you're dealing with a lot of timing and you're dealing with a lot of slippage, like the ball kind of slides up the face, so having a consistent, I got a really good buddy of mine, a New England guy, and he's like, man, I finally kind of get my game into a spot, then it gets cold and I kind of lose, like, give me something I need to work on. So I just gave him some simple like chipping setup advice. It's like, man, if you can learn to play from a square setup and make where the ball contacts first, especially people that deal with like winter golf and, coming out of like snow and everything, when you go back and play, I mean, especially where you are, you deal with really cold weather, go back, snow, ice, all the stuff that kind of goes in. And then you get that like nasty mush. And ball first is important, kind of all the stuff that kind of goes along with it and everything. And so, that would be the thing that I would work on. And then understand of, play more break. Those are two simple things that I would kind of work from there.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because on chipping, I would consider myself a pretty good chipper, but I do have my feet open and my club more at the target, right? So if I'm open here, I'm going right there at the target. That's how I've chipped my whole life.
Yeah, but if people have like the flag stick here, face here, feet there, like at some point it becomes luck. But
absolutely.
If people operate off a square club face and they manipulate their setup kind of around there, then that's kind of a good place to go from there.
So you're going right, your feet are aiming at the target and your club head is, and you're like this, or would I hear you? You're more like that.
Yeah. No, it's body and feet shut to the target, right? And face is at the target, and kind of work off of that. So where you can kind of keep loft and present loft as much as you possibly can. You watch those like old like Seve Ballesteros videos and like Pete Cowan in the bunker. They get shut and drop the hands where the club can kind of stay and they can keep loft on it. So just kind of a different way to kind of think about it.
Well, I know I'm doing the offseason, changing my pitching game.
Yep.
But back to mindset, man. On days that maybe, especially early on in your transition to where you're at today, what was the mindset preparation to get you to the point where even on days you didn't want to do it, you showed up?
I mean, nothing, worth having came easy. And, I'm not sitting here trying to just bang you with quotes all day, but I mean,
No, I
at
love
some
it.
point, like you got to take a look at the fact of like, man, truly want to aspire to be one of the best players in the world. Like, no one's going to give it to me. Like, I can think of a million things I would rather be doing today than running through this wedge test that I'm about to do when we're done. But I know that at the end of the day, like, it's going to help propel me and do the thing. Like, I'm going to wish that I did it instead of, coming back, and being and regretting that. I'd rather feel that way, be proud and understanding the opportunity that I took the time and effort to try to help, me get better, whatever that is, instead of being in a situation where I was like, I should have worked a little bit harder. I should have done this. I should have done that. Like, I don't operate in the past. I don't operate in the would have, should have, could have, but I do kind of have that in the front of my mind while everything is sort of taking place.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It makes me think of a quote. I just pulled it out here that Trevor Moawad, he unfortunately passed away, but the author of It Takes What It Takes. If you're a reader, read that book. It was phenomenal. But he said, average people become average by doing average shit. Average is a choice. Greatness is a choice. There is no magic, only decisions. And I've got that written down in this journal I work because I absolutely love it, right? It is a choice. The power of choice is huge, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think people like, I help the Tennessee golf team here in Knoxville where I live. And it's funny, just the mindset as far as, they had a coaching transition a few years ago and just the different things. And, one day I was just kind of over this kid, just kind of peppering me with questions and, sort of just like a little bit like, smart ass, freshman, whatever, and a kid that I've known for a long time. And I was like, man, at some point you're going to understand that I'm truly trying to aspire to be one of the best players in the world, and your nonsense questions are doing me no good. So yes, I am going to train today, and I am going to do something to work on my game. So that being a prerequisite, if you have any other questions that are different than that, please go ahead. I'll be happy to answer it. But if you're asking me, did I work out just for the sense of like wasting air, you're wasting both of our times.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing. I was like, the question should be, all right, what can I do to continue to try to want to do those kind of things instead of just thinking about BS questions, just going to waste both of our time. So I completely agree with that, and understanding that, I mean, the perfect example, I had to figure out a time to train today. We took my wife and my kids went to the Grand Ole Opry, rushed home last night, got home about 1:30, literally just, I mean, peeling my eyeballs back and coming in. It's like, man, I got to hit the ground running, because if I don't do it in the morning, my day is going to get away from me. Have some Christmas stuff this afternoon. It's like, I got to get up, get the kids, to school kind of whenever they decide to wake up, and it's time to get it in, and then kind of do this kind of stuff and kind of go. Not a matter if and when, just a matter of what time to kind of fit it in. And, I do a lot of reverse engineering. Like I kind of plan my day out ahead and kind of understand the best way to kind of create a little bit of margin if I have to. And I mean, that's all choice. Like, I don't have to do that, but I can sit there and spin my wheels and waste time and be inefficient and frustrate everyone around me, including myself. And so just taking a little bit of more time and effort going into, planning that out, goes a long way for everybody, myself included.
And I think it comes down to integrity, right? I mean, I think about too, what you just mentioned there. I don't want to gloss over that. I mean, you're out till 1:30, right? Doing the Grand Ole Opry, wife and kids. There's 1,000 things you could think of than sitting with Brett Gilliland on the circuit of success. But yet, it's integrity. You committed, and you're doing it, right? Whether you wanted to be here today or not, you're here, right? And you showed up. And I think that's part of life too, right? When we're chasing greatness, whether it's in golf or business, you just got to show up, man, and you got to do the freaking work.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big thing too, like, being a part of what you're committed to and kind of understanding all those things is a big part of it. It's like any person, you quit once, it's easier to quit again. You start getting the reputation of a flake or different things like that. And that's applicable to everything. Yeah. That's your family, your relationships, all those things that kind of come in doing those things. Like, so, And even if it's the motivation, I don't want to be that person, like that's enough for some people. But I think it kind of like carries yourself just by the way that you kind of go into a lot of different things. But, you know, and there was, to be honest, how we got ourselves in that situation. It helps if you look at the kids' school calendar. We were convinced our kids got out of school on Friday. They don't actually get out of school till this Wednesday. And both of them have their school parties and everything. So they were adamant. It's like, hey, we want to go to this, but you're getting us back. And I'm like, hey, I'm made for this. The mini tours and college golf built me for driving through the night. I'm ready.
You're ready. So, I'm in, dusting off the dust and getting it going. That leads me actually some question that Timmy Riley, Mikey's brother, wanted to talk about. He played golf at University of Illinois. And he said, when you were on the NGA Hooters tour, how did you fund it, and what was your typical week like on that?
We were actually telling some mini tour stories to my son last night. I said, buddy, like on mini tours, like you have no money to stay in a hotel or anything. So you basically would drive through the night to find any opportunity, a place that would let you crash on their couch or a house or kind of whatever that looked like. So, you know, I was very fortunate. I had a lot of people kind of come around me. I had a good amount of sponsors that kind of got me going my first couple of years, and kind of allowed my wife and I to be together. Yeah. And, you know, planes, trains, automobiles. We stayed in a single wide at a tournament. We did like, when I say a bus, like this was not a good bus. Like this was like a bad bus. Anything that you can think of to get to and from a tournament. You know, everyone has said, if you could write a country song about your career, I said, man, single wides to private jets. I said, we've done it all.
We've done it all.
Like, yeah, I mean, there's a country song in there somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Just got to add a dog to it or something, which I think.
So, yeah, very much so.
Are you superstitious?
No, I'm not. I'm probably so superstitious about not being superstitious. I would say I'm very routine. And my caddy and my wife would probably be better because they're kind of like the same person, just as far as their personalities. My wife is significantly better looking than my caddy.
That's good.
But just as far as their personality, they probably could tell some stuff that I would do that I don't realize I do. Yeah. Especially when I'm playing, because my wife said, like, I don't even need to see it's you. I can see about 2 or 3 mannerisms, and I'm like, yeah, that's him. That's him out there. Yeah. So,
well, think about your wife too, man. Back to those days when you're not on the private jets, you're on the crappy bus. I mean, think of that support, man.
Yeah. I mean, we told some hilarious stories, and, think about like mindset and some of those pinch me moments and different things like that. We had this one tournament where basically we tried to play golf in a hurricane, and it was the hardest rain I've ever seen in my life. And this is before Netflix. This is before anything. This is when Redbox first came out. So just think about how old I am. And we went in and we were trying to figure out what we were going to do, because essentially they were canceling the tournament for 3 days. And then we were going to just have like a 2-day just free for all, play as much golf as we could once the storm passed. And I went in and we needed a DVD player because this place we were staying was pretty much barely had 4 walls. But it had a TV. It's like, man, we're just going to hammer some Redbox, just be inside. It's not really safe to, storm's awful. And I remember telling, it's like, I'm going to go to Walmart. I'm going to buy this DVD player. And if I play bad, I'm going to return it, because we literally have zero money. And, just something to kind of occupy our time for the next few days. Well, I ended up birdieing the last hole in the tournament, and I finished third, and I made $16,800. That's the biggest check I'd ever made in my career. And this is my 15th year as a pro, 13th year on the tour. I still have that DVD player.
No, that's awesome.
Like every time I see it, I look at it, I think about that time. I know exactly, I could take you to that Walmart, to that aisle in Savannah, Georgia, and just remember just grinding on it. Like, man, how am I really going to spend? It was $39. And I mean, that's truly like, I had some great dudes come around me and support me, but $39 to play a practice round at a course that you're getting ready to do a Monday qualifier at, or $39 to kind of occupy your time in the middle of nowhere in Savannah. Like, those are conversations you had to have in the mini tours. Yeah. And I think, I mentioned a good buddy of mine with the Cubs, when he was playing winter ball, he said they went to this place and they couldn't afford any of the room service or anything at this place where he was playing. And, basically they were taking water from the field, and they have a very similar story to us, and they have a George Foreman like sandwich maker. I mean, it was like $30 again, and they have a beautiful home here in Tennessee, and you go and they have this. You're like, what in the world is this thing doing here? It's like, yep, it's staying. Like that'll be with us forever. Actually, we don't even know if it works, but it's staying.
It's staying. Well, it's just a
'cause
mental piece, right? I mean, you think about where you came from.
Yeah, very much so. And I think a bunch of people, throughout your career, you need to have different things. You need to have things you aspire to, but have other things around you that remind you of kind of where you came from and understanding of how not to lose that. And I've got a wife that fills me with humility on a daily basis, and and challenges me in a lot of different ways to kind of be a better person in a lot of different areas. But that's one of those things that I look on, and very happy to have been a part of my career, and something that I look at, and it's a conversation piece or whatever, because I don't know the last time someone actually used a DVD player, just with all the stuff that kind of goes along. But hey, we have one, and it'll be with us for a long time.
I love it. Last two topics. I could talk all day, man, on this stuff, but I want to talk live golf, and I want to talk about some bourbon. You okay with those two topics?
I know I should have some bourbon, then we can really get into it about live. And I mean, who knows what I might say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I told you my goal is to not make the headlines on this stuff. So, but I do want to talk about the live golf stuff and what your thoughts are on it. Give us your perspective there.
I think Liv has pushed the tour in to make some changes that they probably were in the process of making. It kind of fast tracked them in. There were going to be some players that took advantage of the situation, and myself was included. I had a lot of opportunities this past season that I probably wouldn't have otherwise. I mean, making the tour championship, understanding all the stuff that went in with making it to East Lake, and the exemption, and Maui and majors and all the different things that go in affect our world ranking. I was one of those beneficiaries. I think the tour is a little short-sighted in regarding to how they viewed the threat of live, sort of as like, hey, this is not going to happen. I wish they would have done a little bit better job as far as, preparing for the sort of shock and awe that came. Oh, they actually did it. It's like, yeah, they're going to do it. But at the end of the day, I think that the PGA Tour is the best tour in the world. I think that live is an exhibition, and it's very entertaining. I'm not sure exactly how viable it is in terms of the way that their business plan is, and with TV. And that's, again, I know nothing about that. So I'm going to try to give my opinions on things that I know, not things that I hope or speculate. But I think that, like, them saying they had the best players in the world, they do have, their roster is very strong as far as guys that have accomplished a lot, but they have a decent amount of guys that were just the first people to say yes. Like, there's no legacy, there's no understanding of how to qualify. There's no one had to go dig it in the dirt, like Tiger was saying, and figure it out and qualify to gain status. I mean, they signed their name on a piece of paper, and kind of hitched themselves to a horse that didn't really know what direction it was going in. And I think that it pushed the tour to kind of understand they needed to change some things, which I was a huge proponent of as long as I've been on tour. And I think we're going to continue to see that evolve. I think the tour has a big transition year in 2023, preparing for 24 with the new schedule and some new partnerships that are coming along. And it'd be very interesting to see how the fans and the players kind of react to, I think there'll be some that are very, very positive. I think some that'll be pretty controversial.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, they don't have their story, right? I mean, think about that DVD story. I think back even through my career, the things I used to do, and going and driving across God's green earth at 8:00 at night to go to somebody's house. And I mean, just grind. I don't think even the young guys, the guys that I don't even know who they are that are signing there, they're not going to have those moments. And I think there's a lot to learn about life and about the grind and about winning in those moments. Don't you?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, but that's not to say that, like, I was just not given an offer. Like, it's pretty easy to say, oh, I did it, I turned it down. It's like, I mean, like, so I never really had to, face the music there or anything. I think there's a lot of scenarios where Sorry, 1 second. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing with my dog. Uh, but I think there's a lot of scenarios where, you know, it's pretty easy to say, "Oh, I did this, I did that," when you didn't really had to face a whatever, a 10-figure offer or
Yeah.
whatever, people were getting. I think it's a lot easier to sit there and like, who knows what I'd have done in that situation. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm looking forward to the opportunities I have to play on the PGA Tour, and hopefully they'll continue to adjust for the better to kind of help us and continue to help us be the best tour in the world.
Love it. Love it. Let's change the subject to some bourbon now. What are you thinking there? What if I had to ask you that? What's your favorite bourbon? If you had one bottle, you could have the rest of your life. What is it?
If somebody gave me a barrel of, I would probably do a barrel proof Taylor, and that would probably be it. I would give away everything else I have, and that would
That's
be
the one
that
I
would be
don't. I
enough.
don't have the barrel proof. That's a hard one to find, man.
Yeah,
I hear it's good.
a high proof weeder is kind of my preference, and I can be a fast consumer in a lot of different ways, and so a little bit of bite and a little bit of proof goes a long way for me.
I like it. So, what do you see the future of bourbon, man? Because it's crazy right now, isn't it? I mean, just even going to my local gas station here and what they're wanting to charge for some of these Wellers or other things, it's nuts.
Yeah, I think there'll be a big pullback and kind of where you get the year of authenticity in terms of their branding. And 60% of the bourbon market in the United States comes from the same distillery in the middle of Indiana. It's just kind of a marketing play and different things like that. And I think people are playing on thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Creating a brand around a story, not necessarily what's it. Because what was in the bottle and what was in the barrel used to matter, and it should matter to a lot of people instead of necessarily what the label says. And people play way more time and attention into the label and the story behind it instead of actually what the story that went into making the juice. So
Yeah.
I'm way more on that side. And like I'm a Taylor guy any wheat, but like you give me some aged wild turkey and or some old school like Heaven Hill, and man, I'm gonna have no problems.
I love it. Yeah, I love the horse soldier story, man. That every one of those bottles is made and touches the steel from September 11th or from the
Mhm,
Twin Towers. I think that's a pretty cool
mhm,
story.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is, and they do a good job. And those guys are, man, they drink some rocket fuel down there, and I just think that there's you know, there's some opportunities to kind of tell stories, and there's some opportunities to kind of make them up. And unfortunately, the way that world is sort of 50-50. Their story is incredible, and you can go just down the aisle, and it's the same juice, and someone's trying to tell the complete opposite story. And and when you start understanding the business model of it and how you start source and how you pot and still, and then you kind of go whether you call them and then you age and mix and batch and all the different ways to create a business and a brand out of something that takes a long time to create. It's a wild world, and something I'm very interested in, and very fortunate to kind of learn from a lot of different people that are way better at me, not only in golf and fitness, but the bourbon world as well.
And say it sounds like you're dialing in that bourbon knowledge, just like you're dialing in that 56-degree wedge, man. Maybe we'll see some future stuff coming out of Scott Stallings for some bourbon or something. Who knows?
Yeah, I got a long way to go in that department.
What final questions here? What is something with this crazy schedule you have, that your passions that you wish you had more time to do?
Our Kids Play Free program, something that we do a lot with in Tennessee. We're adding more courses and different things, and just be more hands-on on the day-to-day. Like I do events, some dinners, golf tournaments kind of throughout, but just to be a little bit more involved with the new beginners and kind of see that first time where the kids have a chance to touch a club for the first time. That's kind of the goal of the program. Just take away all the variables of time, cost, and availability, and kind of giving people a chance to to learn from the game that's given me more than I deserve. Yeah. And so I wish I had a little bit more time for that. My wife has really started taking up tennis and playing. And I said, if I could take some time, I think I could be pretty good at it. But if you play about 3 times a year, you're not getting better at anything. So that'd be probably it.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Well, man, thanks so much, Scott, for being on the Circuit of Success. Like I said, you got a million things, a million different directions you can go. So appreciate the wisdom. A lot of takeaways here for me today in the Circuit of Success, and appreciate your time.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on, and I'm sure we'll see you guys again.